Today is Veterans Day. The 5 salutes our brave heroes who served this nation. We're going to talk about our vets ahead, but first to last night's big GOP debate. Fox Business crushed it. Over 14 million viewers tuned in to see Neil, Maria, and Gerard ask real questions, not gotcha questions. Lots to get to, so let's start with one of the hottest topics of the night, immigration. Clear lines were drawn. On one side, Donald Trump and Ted Cruz with a conservative hardline stance. On the other, Jeb Bush and John Kasich with what some might call a considered path to amnesty.
We are a country of laws. We need borders. We will have a wall. The wall will be built. The wall will be successful. And if you think walls don't work, all you have to do is ask Israel. The wall works, believe me, properly done.
Come on, folks. We all know you can't pick them up and ship them back across the border. It's a silly argument.
Every sovereign nation secures its borders, and it is not compassionate to say we're not going to enforce the laws and we're going to drive down the wages for millions of hardworking men and women.
12 million illegal immigrants. To send them back, 500,000 a month, is just not possible. And it's not embracing American values. And it would tear communities apart.
All right, KG, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on A, the immigration debate, B, who you thought did well last night?
You know, I think everybody had a pretty good night. I mean, the only person I saw was being too frustrated and came off like probably not at his best, at his A game, was Kasich. You know, I think he was very frustrated with the situation, felt he didn't get enough time, etc. However, everybody else, I think, basically stayed true to their core ideology, to the message that they wanted to get across. Carson, even in the wake of all the different incidents and the news items that have come forward, I think gave good explanations and was pretty steady. I think he probably exceeded expectations for what they were for him this week. I think Jeb Bush had a good night. I really do. I think he was very consistent in his message. He was very honest by saying he doesn't speak in sound bites, but he stuck to his record, saying that he has a proven record in business for 30 years and as a governor with a successful record to create jobs and taxes. The immigration issue was a little bit tricky, but I don't see that they were calling for amnesty. I think they're saying we have to do this in a way that is going to keep families together and in the true principles of America. So that's the way I saw it. And Rubio and Cruz, I thought, were fantastic.
Gotcha. Okay, Greg, the overall general consensus you're feeling on the candidates and or this topic?
Exactly what Kimberly said. I think the real winner here was the Cuban sandwich. You had the hawkish Rubio, you had the red meat Ted, and together they represent 2 key elements of the party. And I thought that they were the most articulate on their respective sides. I also think Ted Cruz wins when he talks, as opposed to orates. When he starts to lecture, his voice goes up, it drives me crazy. But when he talks, it's great. But the real winner is the public who watched this debate. I mean, when you compare this to CNBC, it's like going from Motel 6 to the Four Seasons. It made the CNBC debate look like a dunking tank for dorks because the questions were very specific. At times they were dry, but the fact is it's the boring stuff that kills you. And I thought they did a really good job. And I think the people at Missouri, this is what the First Amendment is like. Could you imagine an activist from Missouri or a professor from Missouri being on that stage? They would have crumbled. They would have needed a body pillow to hug. They would have needed a safe space because that actually is how politics works and how Republicans doing a better job than Democrats.
And to prove Greg's point, if you look at the quarter hours, Dana, each quarter it grew. Quarters grew. It peaked at around, I believe, around 10:15 or so. So there was an hour and 15 minutes into the debate. People were coming to see what was going on. And at times, it was a bit dry, but so what? People want to hear this stuff.
Well, and I also thought that the follow-up questions were very pointed and targeted, and it actually drew the candidates out even more so that, you know, you can kind of have your canned answer, but the follow-up question is always a place usually where someone can either shine or falter. I do think that everyone did very well. Interesting on the immigration side of things, there clearly is a lot of discussion going on within the party. The biggest applause line last night that Kasich got happened to be when he was talking about immigration, of all things. So there is this split. I couldn't help but think, what if you're Hillary Clinton's camp and you're watching this? How do you figure out a way to talk about immigration in a way that will be productive for her in a general election? Republicans know what their challenges are in a general election on immigration, but for her, I actually think it is difficult for her to figure out how she's going to do it because she can't go a straight leftist play. People are concerned. The other thing on this topic that's very frustrating, and I spent a good part of the day looking at all sorts of different studies and data is that no one is working from the same set of facts. The questions about effects on wages are actually, it's just, nobody is saying, okay, here's the definitive study that we can at least all agree on, that we can then argue from there. There's stuff all over the map. And so if the business community or people that want to restrict immigration more, I think they would do themselves a favor if they could get together and decide on a set of metrics that we can all then have an actual debate about.
Hey, Juan, I gave Rubio and Cruz A's. I gave Trump Carson, Carly Fiorina, Rand Paul B's, and I gave Jeb and Kasich C's only because of their bank bailout question that they couldn't answer or wouldn't answer. Do you see it differently?
You know, I like the way you did it. In fact, today I read something that said that Jeb Bush needed an A-plus performance, but he got a passing grade. And that's what you just gave Jeb Bush, a passing grade, a C. I thought that he started off strong. I liked the passion with which he spoke about the immigration issue. But after that, it felt like he sort of disappeared. There's that little back and forth with Trump, you know. But I just don't see. I thought that stood out to me big time.
Carson?
Carson, I thought, got a pass from his peers. There was the opportunity for them to jump him. There was the opportunity for people to say something about Rubio and his issues. Nothing like that.
That was true all night.
Yeah. So I don't. So I and
well, it's because they found out those stories
today.
about his violence were true.
Could be. Yeah, that's
They
true.
were afraid.
They're like, we'll steer clear.
They were afraid of that in Iowa.
Yeah,
Backlash
I
if they
tried the
badmouthed
tough
him.
black guy thing on this set. It doesn't work. It doesn't matter.
Just makes you sexy.
I know.
It's the purple time.
That doesn't work when you sit
but
next to a Puerto Rican woman.
Well, I'm so lucky.
They're more scared of me.
But I got to say, I mean, there's some things that did jump out. I mean, you were talking about metrics. Trump says wages are too high. Wait a minute. That's not great stuff to say to an audience who says that economic anxiety is one of their principal concerns. And then the second part was, who's really a conservative? I love that debate between Cruz and Rubio.
All right, we got to move on to this one. If you're playing a drinking game, rule number one, do a shot every time you hear the phrase big government. You got drunk. Check it out.
This isn't about just replacing a Democrat with a Republican now. It's about actually challenging the status quo of big government. Big government has created a big business called politics.
I want a government really, really small, so small you can barely see it. So I want lower taxes and much more money in the private sector.
We have a fundamental choice to make, folks. Are we willing to cut the government economy so we can grow the American economy? That is the most fundamental question we've got to answer. We are on the path to socialism right now.
The biggest lie in all of Washington and in all of politics is that Republicans are the party of the rich. The truth is the rich do great with big government.
Dana? Yeah.
I just think that Ted Cruz had a really, really good debate. And I think they all benefited from having a slightly smaller number of fewer people on the stage, though there was 8 instead of the 10, and that gave them all a little bit more time. And I think that they finally are starting to make the case, definitive case, for their candidacy. And you saw Carly Fiorina and Rubio both did this, where they were finally zeroing in on what I've been thinking, we've all been talking about, this anxiety that people feel, especially mothers. So this is where you see people saying that the country is on the wrong track. It's 72% in the Pew or Gallup poll recently. So 72% of people think the country's on the wrong track. But when you drill down a little bit, mothers and fathers, but mostly mothers will say, I worry about the future for my children.
Exactly.
And the one thing I think that they don't then go the next step to say, it's not just immigration that's a problem or energy that's a problem. I don't think that they made the case that none of them made the case that they understand the economy and how complex it is and what actually needs to be done in a wholehearted way or in a holistic way. They have an opportunity to do that in the next few weeks, and they need to.
Greg, do you think anyone made the case that they were really in favor of smaller government and how they were going to do it?
This is the problem with the idea of small government. It doesn't exist anymore. We have to stop lying to ourselves. You know, as conservatives and libertarians, we talk about small government. It's over. Now it's just trying to keep the thing in a cage or trying to figure out a way when they're spending your money, how to spend it. So if I now am embracing big government, I want big military. I want big bombs and big tanks, and I want big power. If we're going to spend, let's spend. By the way, I forgot to add, Kasich was absolutely awful last night. I don't know if we're going to talk about that later, but he reminds me of the guy that's in front of you when you're trying to check into a hotel room and is complaining about the shower head, and you're just tired, but he won't stop complaining, and everybody's just sitting there going, would you please shut up?
But do you realize what he did about 3/4 of the way through the debate when Ted Cruz asked him about bank bailouts, are you there or not? He said, no. Well, what are you going to do? And then Kasich said, says, well, what about all those depositors,
Yeah.
individual depositors? And Cruz says, what are you going to do? And Kasich, I think he blew his whole candidacy up in one line where he says, well, we'll figure out who can afford it and who can't. I mean, if that is a liberal talking point straight down the
Redistributor of
middle.
wealth. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. That's their lingo.
I don't like that exchange, though, because I feel like you actually don't know. You can't predict exactly what decision you're going to make before you walk into the Oval Office. You can talk about a set of principles, but until you're presented with all of the facts and have a chance to deliberate those, you don't really know. I do think, though, he did say one thing that he could stick to, and I said that people are going to love this, and they did. When Ted Cruz said that he would veto any legislation that didn't also apply to members of Congress, huge applause. And I think in the Frank Luntz focus group, that was like a 96%er. Like, that was a really smart, good thing to say, something that you could actually stick to.
But I just thought, if you're a Democrat watching this last night, you said, you know what? I see these large lines of division among Republicans. We can talk about immigration. And I think if you were with the Hillary Clinton campaign, yes, you were laughing because guess what? Unlike your position, Dana, I think it doesn't take a lot for the Democrats to say we are much more pro-immigrant than any of these Republicans.
No, I'm not saying that, but do you think that necessarily helps them all the way in the general election?
Yeah, you're just talking about a Republican base and a Republican
I'm talking about
primary.
the general. I know. I think it's bigger than that one. I don't think this is just a R&D issue.
I think it is, and I think
we shall see.
Stay right there because we have one more topic we want to get to. When they weren't taking swipes at each other, some candidates focused their fire at the Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton, and that tactic pretty effective.
I want to talk about what's going to happen to this country if we have another 4 years of Barack Obama's policies. And by the way, it'll be even worse because Hillary Clinton is running so far to the left to try to catch up to her socialist opponent, Bernie Sanders, it's hard to even see her anymore.
Hillary Clinton has said that Barack Obama's policies get an A. Really? 1 in 10 people right now aren't working or have given up altogether, as you said. That's not an A. 1 in 7 people are living in poverty. That's not an A. 1 in 5 children are on food stamps. That is not an A. It may be the best that Hillary Clinton can do, but it's not the best America can do.
For the first time in 35 years, we have more businesses dying than starting. And around the world, every day brings news of a new humiliation for America. Many, the direct consequence of decisions made when Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State.
All right, KG, you called that yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday I said, listen, leg sweep Hillary, pantsuit and all. That's what you've got to do. Have move on target. That's the mission objective. Quit trying to eat each other's arms and legs off and just focus on her because that's when you look presidential, you sound presidential. I think Christie crushed it last night. He sounded presidential. He looked and acted like he wanted the job and he was prepared. I was very impressed with that. And, I also thought that Ben Carson had good lines when he was talking about that's what we call a lie, where I come from, about Hillary Clinton and lying about Benghazi, telling her daughter Chelsea something, the American people something else. And Jeb, I think, was very strong on focusing on Hillary Clinton and tying her to Barack Obama and making the case strongly that a vote for Hillary Clinton is a vote for someone to the left of Barack Obama, and the country can't afford that. That's the case. That's what needs to be said.
Did Hillary have a good debate or bad debate last night?
Yeah, a great debate. Are you kidding? I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking, boy, look at this, premature hating on Hillary.
What do you mean?
Because you don't even have a candidate.
Oh,
you don't have anybody that's unifying the Republican debate.
No,
I'm being serious.
Now this is silly.
You don't have, right now, I think it's Ben Carson and Donald Trump have about 50%, right? Okay, that's it. But other than that, in this large field, was it 14 or 15 candidates right now? 14. It's splintered, Kimberly. It's thoroughly splintered, and there's no center to it.
But she's talking about on the merits.
Yes.
She's not talking, of course there's going to be no, she's talking about the merits of Hillary Clinton's policy. Well, she's saying that they're not good.
Look,
you can argue that point. The point you're actually arguing something that she's not saying.
You know what? Eric, why does she keep interrupting
for the
me?
UN.
Why does she keep interrupting?
She's trying to help you.
Now he's going to interrupt me.
You're going to get booed.
Hillary has not come to close to this kind of mature political vetting. You maybe have 15 candidates up there, but at least we all know what we're getting into, unlike 2008 when nobody kicked Obama's tires.
Well, I think this came across as a Republican echo chamber on Hillary. Oh, she's terrible. You know what? The wild witch of the West is flying in.
Come on, Juan. Don't be politically nice.
You said it.
And you say we cut you off, Juan.
Give him a little cow.